Hello, gang. Hello.
Hi.
Yeah, we were supposed to be starting at 8 o'clock tonight. We are hangry. We are achy. And we thought, do you know what? We are the boss of this podcast. So we're going to just start early so that we can then go eat, take medication. We might not even wait for it to finish before we eat and take medication.
You might not.
I want to bring you guys up to speed with a couple of little things, a little few housekeeping type things. Oh, I'm in a grumpy mood, right? There's a thing going on with my neck. I'm not sleeping. I'm on the good drugs. So I'm slightly twirly, shall we say? Sarah, your health. You're a picture of health.
I'm a thoroughly grumpy old woman at the moment, partly because I have a knee that is causing me significant pain and I need to take some painkillers, but if I take them, I won't be sitting here podcasting. I'm hangry, living in utter chaos because we're having the house renovated and the entire contents of the kitchen are in my bedroom. Which is the only room in the house. Half the electric sockets in the house aren't working, so I can't even find anywhere to plug my laptop into podcast from tonight. So I've got my tablet sitting on my bed. And it's just all chaotic, and it's really, really nonsense and all chaotic. And seeing as I went out for lunch with my bishop today, now there's a treat. We're going to tell you about that later, folks. I shouldn't be hungry, but I am.
There's a few things that I need to mention before we kick off, because tonight is something a little bit different. We promised you guys something a little bit different.
It is.
So because we're in this very weird, unhealthy space, we're not the picture of health at the moment. You could get anything tonight. I'm trying to make my webcam work, and I don't think I'm loving it. I don't think I'm.
What we are going to get tonight is really looking at Bonfire Night. Fireworks, bonfires, Catherine wheels, rockets, bangers, grenades, lobbing things, blowing things up. Terrorism versus justice versus riot versus seeking peace. So much stuff we're going to talk about tonight.
So Sarah's going to get a lecture at the end of this about spoiler alerts. So we need to link some ideas at the beginning before we start. So yes, tonight is chaotic. We're feeling very chaotic. The podcast itself is in a bit of a transition phase. Now I made very clear last week, and I've been doing this out with podcasting also when we've been meeting with people about the podcast. We've got lots of interviews. We've stressed we're still doing a lot of work in the background. You guys are familiar with our work by this point. I am sick of talking about Mormonism. I am fed up of dragging Mormonism down the street with me. And last week I said, no Mormonism, we're going to take a change of pace. However, because Sarah's still in this transition phase, we are going to do a little pinch of Mormonism at the beginning, and I swear, honestly, it's there. After this month, there will be no bloody more. I'm sick. I'm done with it.
I'm not sure that's a promise we'll be able to keep.
Well, let me.
We'll try.
It's going to have to be a different podcast host. Put it that way, because what is happening is coming back to podcasting after such a long break, it's mentally not healthy for me. I'm not LDS anymore. I've moved on, and to come back to keep talking about toxic, unhealthy ideas, I would love to say I can just talk about the healthier side of Mormonism, However, it's not as simple as that, and it's really difficult to find a healthy side when we're there. So for the good of my health, for the good of my mental health, for the good of my family's well-being, what it's going to look, it doesn't mean that we're totally walking away from everything that we've done before. We're still doing broadly conversations about and this is why we need to these ideas up. We are going to talk about a little bit of Mormonism first. We are also going to talk about the fact, or we're going to be wrestling with the fact, demonstrating the fact that we're told there is nowhere to go after Mormonism. What does a post-Mormonism life look like? I am kind of hacked off at the thought of becoming almost a Mormon cliche about, not being able to leave things alone, coming across as being anti the church, which is ending up how I end up feeling, and it doesn't reflect actually how I really feel. It just doesn't. It's not where my head is at. So what we wanted to do was to have conversations about, okay, how are people wrestling with these ideas? How are people either deconstructing? What does moving on actually look like? And Sara did that wonderfully well until she was sucked back into the church via a safeguarding calling. So that idea we're going to sort of link up. So future conversations that we're going to be having. We are so excited. Does anybody want to hear from the incredible Lachlan Mackay, Community of Christ historian, who held the daguerreotype in his hands as like, hey, I think this is Joseph Smith. That is a conversation I want to have. There are so many people that are excited to come on and have discussions with us that are meaningful, rather than us just picking away at UK Mormonism, which is dying anyway, and the conversation is boring, is unstimulating, and unhelpful. That doesn't mean we leave behind safeguarding. So when there is stuff to be done, we will do it. We're going to call out unhealthiness across any religion. We are hoping to have someone come on to speak with us about how religious conditioning, how cults and high demand religions rewire the brain, the impact that has on the brain. So there's conversations I really want to have that aren't just me being held back, if that makes sense. So I'm saying this out loud so that our audience can sort of hold us to account, because I feel like this week I'm almost sort of skulking back in saying, okay, going to talk about Mormonism for a minute. But in this case, I do think it is really important that we do, because Sara, you still haven't handed in your resignation yet, right? You are going to be having a meeting for a chat. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. I mean, handing in my resignation is on my list of things to do, and I'm going to get around to it fairly soon. It's on the list of things that need to be done. So, as I say, it's going to get done. Yeah, it's happening. I did a lot of preparation that started many years ago for my leaving the Mormon church, and I decided I was going to leave several years ago. And some of that preparation was about joining a walking group, because I love walking and making all new friends, getting to know a whole lot of new people, because I knew that moving on would mean that I wouldn't have as much contact with people. And as Jane said, I kind of got sucked back into staying because of safeguarding. So that's what's happened. I ended up staying because of that for longer than I intended. I've got a meeting coming up shortly on the 16th of November with my bishop and my stake president, and that is not particularly to talk about me leaving. That may get discussed at that meeting, depending on how I feel. It may not get discussed at that meeting. It may be something I've done before that meeting takes place. It may be something I do afterwards or at the time.
What are you going to do if they beg you to stay? If they're like, Sara, don't go, don't leave me, Sara?
I think I need to, refer them back to thinking about the fact that God is with each one of us on whatever path we're taking, and that we need to get far better in the church at trusting people to take their own journey and their own path, and that there's more than one way to enjoy. If we want to enjoy a relationship with God or spirituality, then there's more than one way to do it. It doesn't have to be in the church. There's lots of other ways to do it. I also think I will want them to point out that they just need to trust me to know what's right for my own life. They need to trust me that I know what is right for me. There isn't a decision I've reached overnight. It isn't a decision that's a spur of the moment, in a grumpy, bad-tempered moment. And I do make decisions in grumpy, bad-tempered moments, but this isn't one of them. This has been a decision that's been on my mind for several years, many years. And I think I need to just remind them that there are places to go when you leave the church, and that all the stuff that we hear at church, that there's no life if you leave the church, what you're going to do, where you're going to go, your life's going to go downhill, you don't know how far you'll fall. People that leave this church are thriving, they're happy, they're living their best life. They're sometimes finding spirituality and Christianity in other places, they're sometimes not. But things are going really well for so many people who leave. And I think they just need to trust that I know what's right for me, and that I should be doing that which is in my own best interests, trusting the journey I'm on and my version and understanding and definition of God that is with me.
Can I
I mean,
just
if I do stay, I might offer to teach Sunday school occasionally. You never know, but I'm not going to stay. And if I leave, I might offer to come back and teach Sunday school occasionally, because it'd be a bit of fun.
Yeah, you'll rock. It'll be great. Everyone will love
Yeah, it'd be a bit of a laugh.
Can I just refer to a couple of comments? So yeah, we've got the wonderful, my Scottish buddy Mary pointing out Community of Christ is still a form of Mormonism. Absolutely, as Mormon roots.
Absolutely.
Just so happens I did join Community of Christ. This is not and will never be a propaganda channel for Community of Christ, in the same way as when I was an edgy Latter-day Saint, I wasn't a propaganda person while I was a member. We call out stuff whenever we see it. The other thing is, I think most people today who certainly younger people, most people who join Community of Christ in the UK actually don't know anything about Mormonism. It's not a word, phrase, background that they're familiar with, because the Mormonism beginnings are not relevant to them. Now, of course, it's relevant to me because it's a bloody fascinating subject. It's very interesting. So yeah, just thought I'd point that out. And then we've got the wonderful Catherine Class, who says exactly, Sarah, they need to trust people to know their own minds. Now, I would say that, with all due respect, and we will not name people. We don't, well, unless you're in the comments and just, there's a reason we don't name people. It's one of those sort of who you are things. But I've referred to my bishop before under the title of bishop. I've referred to my stake president before. We've had cause to do that. You get the title, mate. You've got us in your ward. So at times we've referred to it. We've never ever shared anything we've been asked not to share. We've never talked about anything confidential, and we will always respect that. But would you mind, Sarah, just for a moment, however long you want, could we talk about your bishop for a moment? Because what I can categorically say is, I've never met this man. I adore this man. And it's so interesting that you're choosing now to step back and leave, because I can tell you right now, if that man had been my bishop, I would not have left the church. I would still be a member of the LDS Church. I wouldn't have had to make that decision. And that guts me. And it's not to do with staying for personalities. It's to do with the fact that I wouldn't have been isolated. I would have had someone who would have been able to listen and properly engage with me. I wouldn't have had to make the call that by I was being hurt by being held in a space where it was just liminal space. It was just like this empty vortex. I was quarantined. There was no one and nothing, and no one who would engage with me at all. And it was mentally very, very disturbing. Your bishop really cares about you.
Yeah. Do you know, if love and kindness and genuineness and chuck it all in a mix with a really good sense of humour, if that could be enough to keep me, I would stay. It would keep me. Yeah. If that was enough. The reality is, my bishop has been great. He's been absolutely great. He is great, and I sort of trust him when I leave, that he will stay in contact. I trust him that there will still be that friendship and we will stay in contact with one another. I kind of trust that's going to happen. I think it will. I saw him today, just literally chance encounter, because I'm living in a building site at the moment with no electricity and no anything else, and it's all chaotic. I went to KFC for lunch today, and as I was...
Other food outlets are available.
No, there was no other option. That was it. There was no other option.
And we're not allowed to say, that in case we're accused of promoting KFC and making problems. So
yeah, but I mean,
other food outlets are available. Anyway, continue.
Other food outlets are available, but actually I chose to go to that particular food outlet.
Right.
So I met my bishop in there, who was also by lunch. So I said, what are you doing in here? And seems getting lunch. So we ended up sitting down and having lunch together. And it was really lovely. It was great. He sort of said, oh, I'll get a table. And then he kind of said, but you don't have to sit with me if you don't want to. And I said, I'd love to sit with you. I said, I would love to come and sit with you. I said, we can have a chat and a catch up. And it was really lovely. We just sat, we had chatted, we both talked about what's going on in our lives. We talked about various things that are happening. We just had a really lovely, friendly, nice little chat. And he kind of said, with a little bit of hopeful wistfulness in his eyes, you're going to come to church on Sunday? I said, probably not. And he went, oh, well. He said, well, you know where we are if you want to come. I said, yeah. I said, I might, you never know. But I said, I think it's unlikely. And then he sort of said, well, we've got that meeting on the 16th, haven't we, with the stake president? I said, yes. And he said, will you stay for church after that meeting? He said, or do you think you'll want to have the meeting and then just go? And I said, I think I'll probably hang around for the morning. I said, and just say hi to people. And he said, oh, that'd be really good. And then we chatted about other things, and that was fine. And I think the thing is, there was no pressure. There was no expectation. There was, I'd love you to come. I'd love you to stay. It would be really good to see you. But I totally get it and understand if you don't want to. And that's okay. So it's, and as I say, if love and kindness would be enough to keep people in the church, then I think he's a bishop that would keep people in the church. And I remember when you were leaving, Jane, I was really angry with your bishop and stake president, because I had at that time a stake president and a bishop that were both fantastic. They both had so much love and kindness and consideration, and they were just two leaders that I had the utmost respect and love and care and concern for. And they did hold me for a long time to the church. Every time I thought they did have a lot to do with me saying that and the safeguarding. And I remember how often I contrasted them with your stake president bishops that didn't even respond to your, I'm going to resign from the church, but I would really like a conversation with you first before I go. And you tried to talk to your bishop, your stake president. Neither of them bothered to get back to you. And Jane's going to shoot me after the meeting for saying this, but I'm going to say anyway. The one person, because we have a lot of conversations with a senior lawyer, not the abuse helpline lawyer, but a much more senior lawyer in the church. We have a lot of conversations with him. Jane contacted and said, I just want to make you aware that I will be resigning my church membership. I'm in the process of resigning it. This is why. And just to let you know, I will still be involved in the safeguarding, so we're still going to have contact, but I just felt I needed to let you know I won't be a member. He was the only person, your bishop and stake president couldn't be bothered to do it, but he emailed back really kind words of, please talk to your priesthood leaders, please talk to them. I'm sure they will have counsel, they will want to encourage you to stay, they will want to have conversations with you about why you're leaving, they will want to understand. If there's the slightest shred of doubt in your mind, please don't go. And I'm really sorry that you're going.
He said it in such a kind way. Yep.
He said it in such a nice way. I spoke to my stake president and I just said, I'm really fed up. I said, Jane's leaving the church. I said, I'm really cross with this church. I said that Jane has to go because she can't stay. And he sat there and he looked at me and said, I am so sorry she's leaving. He said, that is a real loss for the church. He said, I hope she could talk to her stake president, he said, about the reasons, and he said maybe she'll stay. He said, if she, maybe her stake president will help her stay. And I thought, none of you have any idea that this is somebody who Jane has said, please, can I talk to you? And it's just ignored it. And then he emailed back and said, I'm processing your resignation.
Yeah.
So the contrast of a bishop that you actually can have confidence that loves and cares and is concerned, and the contrast of those that don't even want to have conversations, just shows that one of the big problems we face in this church is leadership roulette.
Yes.
We face a huge problem of, if you get good leaders, like I've been blessed with, I have had good leaders for the last few years in my life in the church. There's been times it hasn't always been like that, but the last couple of years I've had good leaders. That makes a huge difference to how I'm feeling about going, because I know I can go and it's going to be okay. You haven't had that opportunity, and that is really, it's not okay. It's not okay that we have such leadership roulette in this organisation.
And I think perhaps most people don't want to have that conversation, and that's fine. And I wonder if that's why it's maybe easier for church leaders to just, if just exit quietly. We don't really want to have this conversation. The disappointing thing, I think, is that, one, I did, two, there was scope for that pastoral care. And if anyone, I asked if they would stay in touch. If anyone asked at any point over the past, year and a half now, and if anyone asked me about this Sunday, do you want to, will you come to church this Sunday? I would say yes. I would say I'd love to. There's that I could go on one, but I don't want to go for me. It might be different if someone's actually asked it. It just, it makes it different.
It does.
Yeah. So what it affects when my mate is hurt by people. I don't like it. It makes me very, very angry. When you are loved by people, it does something for my heart. It fills me up, and I feel that ministry too. And so I love your bishop. I love your bishop, and I don't know. I hope he gets to know what a really good man he is, because I think you've got a good ward there. When you have someone who's leading the ward in that way, it's incredible. Okay, are we ready to actually do our job and talk about some stuff?
Yes, let's talk about the plan for tonight.
So Sara is under doctor's orders not to do a tremendous amount of walking, to rest, in the manner of Sara Delaney, who is very good at listening to the advice of professionals. Well, Sara just does a couple of miles now. Whenever she's not like she does a big walk. She just you've calmed it down. You're taking it easy. That's rest, right? That counts.
Well, you see, the problem is the doctors aren't following the script I've written for them. So I go and see a consultant, and I've got a script in my head of what the consultant is going to say to me. And then he says, well, in orthopedics, and I'm like, no, that's not the script I've written in my head for you. You're not following it. Which is not adding to my general grumpiness that I actually am not spending as much time outdoors, because I can't walk more than about 3 miles at the moment. So it's actually not going down well with me, and I'm not spending as much time outdoors. So that's my excuse for my thoroughly grumpy mood at the moment. That's my excuse.
And it's legitimate. So
it is.
We're going to share an experience that's kicked off by Sarah's restful walks, in inverted commas, that I was fascinated by and I absolutely love. Now, just to let you all know, what I might do is interject a little bit. Sarah, hold on a minute. Has someone just brought you in a takeaway? Has someone brought you food?
They're about to. Somebody's about to walk into the door of my room with a McDonald's, and actually, no, we want to say that, are we? So it's not actually. They're going to walk into the door with some form of a burger and some form of potatoes and some form of a drink.
As long as we point out other food outlets that are available, we're fine. Yes, no.
Yeah, there's plenty, and we don't recommend any food. We don't recommend any particular food outlet over and above any other particular food outlet. But if somebody delivers food to you and brings it to you, and you are starving, then I'm afraid you just have to do what you just have to do. Right,
exactly. So, what I wanted to do was to sort of introduce this story that's kicked off by Sarah's outing, Sarah's restful outing. Now, tonight in the UK is Bonfire Night. So if these microphones are doing their job, you will hear no extra noise. If they're not, you may hear explosions in the distance. It's crazy here. The skies are alight with fireworks, and it's lovely. It's really nice. I love the smell.
The smell of bonfires is absolutely fabulous. I love that smell.
And most years I'll go out and we'll be outside. I'll be spinning fire. That's one of the things that I like to do. At the same time, we have burgers, we're eating outside, and Ronan can kind of get involved by looking out of the window and with his window open. So he's sort of out. There's a bit of a combo of outdoor indoors. Now, when Sarah kicks off this story and the background of it, there will be times when I will want to interject on behalf of the Scots who are amongst the audience. Mary, I've got your back. She's got my back. Us Scots will not be written out of this story. Now, Sarah's not saying anything about a particular type of burger, right? I've just muted her so that we all don't need to be tortured with and hear what she's having for dinner. I can't believe I had to mute you there while you were refining your order, and we all had to be tortured about it. Anyway, so Sarah, you went out for a walk one day. Fill us in. Do you want me to remind you? Oh, it's because she's muting herself. Right, there we go.
Unmuting, it's not working. There we go. Okay, I went for a walk. Now, 3 miles from where I live is a very lovely stately home that I love. It's one of my favourite places. The footpaths, the grounds, the walking around there is absolutely fabulous. And it's a place called Coton Court. It's kind of managed by the National Trust in conjunction with the family that actually lived there, the Throckmorton family. But Coton Court has a very, very rich history that is really absolutely spot on for today. The history of Coton Court is that this is where the gunpowder plot was hatched. It's where the conspirators stored all their weapons, their tools of destruction. It's where they made their plans. It's where the family members waited whilst they'd gone off to do the work they were going to go and do. It's where they waited for news. So let's just talk about this Guy Fawkes. Gunpowder plot was... Well, Guy Fawkes was part of a group of English Catholics that wanted to blow up the Houses of Parliament. Now, the reason they wanted to blow up the Houses of Parliament was they wanted to spark an uprising. They wanted to restore Catholic rule, Catholic law, and the Catholic Church. They wanted to restore Catholic succession to the throne. So they wanted to kill off James I. They wanted to kidnap his daughter, get her back on the throne, and actually bring about an uprising. So in order to fulfill this plot...
Sara, where, just to sort of... This is where the Scottish link comes in. James I is James I of England, because in Scotland we've had quite a few Jameses up until this point. He is the son of you may be more familiar with Mary, Queen of Scots, in our audience. If you're in America, you will have more likely heard that name than the others. So he's her son. She is a Catholic, and she was notoriously was a Catholic, and she was sort of trying to get her right to the throne of Scotland and also potentially England shored up by the Catholic Church, which they were quite happy to do. Now, her son was raised as a Protestant. He was so there was this sort of tension there. So he succeeds, and he's a Protestant, which is what people want. But the Stuarts were traditionally, which is what his line was, the Stuarts were traditionally Catholic. So we see already this sectarian tension, this Catholic Protestant tension, which already had been going for several hundred years, and continues. It's certainly Scotland, Ireland today. Sara, keep going.
Well, at that time, I think it's worth noting that there was a lot of persecution of Catholics, and King James I wanted to continue to persecute Catholics. And Guy Fawkes and his mates were like, this isn't happening anymore. We've had enough of this. So they hoped that they would be able to get rid of all these problems. So the leader of these conspirators was a man called Robert Gatsby. And on November the 5th, 1605, the opening day of Parliament, they decided they were going to carry out the attack, the king would have been there opening Parliament. They could kill the king, kill off Parliament, blow up the Houses of Westminster. And their hopes then was that they'd bring about a chance for change, believing that after such an assassination, murder of the king, half of Parliament, blowing up the Houses of Parliament, that the confusion would create an opportunity for English Catholics to seize control of the country. That was what they wanted. They wanted to seize control of the country, stop what they felt was persecution by the Protestants, and restore Catholic rule, the Catholic throne, and from them, what they felt would be peace. Now, the plot failed. Now, the plot only failed because somebody sent an anonymous warning letter to Lord Mounteagle and said, hey, listen, something's going to be happening here. They then did a search of Parliament and found Guy Fawkes along with 36 barrels of gunpowder or something, this huge amount of gunpowder in the basement chambers of the Houses of Parliament. So he was tortured until he gave the name of his co-conspirators. Then they were rounded up and the plot completely failed. Now, while these guys had all ridden off to London to go and take part in this attack, to be ready to guide the uprising that they hoped was going to follow, all the women, their cousins, family members gathered in Coton Court, this stately home that's a few miles from my house. They gathered there, which was the home of this family, and they waited in an upstairs room that's on the second floor of the house that had a really clear view for kind of miles, that you could just see open land for miles. And they sat in that room because they were watching to see the men come back on horse. They were right when see the horses coming down across the fields, down towards the house, and they knew that as they saw the horses come, they'd know this has happened. However, what they saw was one man coming back on one horse, and as soon as they saw that single solitary rider heading towards the house, they instantly knew that the plot had failed. And that was followed not long after by people being arrested, and even more persecution, and even more kind of negativity towards Catholics because, oh, you've just tried to kill our king and just tried to blow up our Houses of Parliament.
Well,
So that was now, just to chuck in here, just not that I want us to spend any time at all on this tonight, but we need to chuck in here that there was another plot to cause havoc and destruction on November the 5th, but this time on November the 5th, 2015, when the church introduced the policy of exclusion. So November the 5th has had two policies that were geared to harm specific groups of individuals. 1605, Robert Gatsby led the plot with Guy Fawkes to actually destroy the Houses of Parliament and destroy Protestants. And in 2015, the church had a policy of exclusion that was actually about stopping children being baptised. But yeah, I just thought we'd acknowledge that because I don't want us to not have acknowledged that. So back to Guy Fawkes and what was happening.
One of when the tension between Catholics and Protestants at the time, whoever was in power was more or less there would be state-sanctioned violence against the people who practiced whichever religion they were not. So there was, there would be violence against Protestants, significant violence against Catholics. Then the balance of power would shift again. So there was this sort of back and forth, frequently. But interestingly, I think about the gunpowder plot is that I had no idea about this actually until we were having a look at after you had been for this trip and we were sort of preparing to talk about it tonight. It was seen, the foiling of this plot was seen as a sign that God was in control, that miraculously that this has been stopped, and so therefore the country is protected by God. So the country then passes a law it's known as the Thanksgiving Act, and it made it mandatory to hold and attend religious services on the 5th of November each year. And that law was only abolished in 1859. In that act, the original services around the 5th of November, Guy Fawkes is hardly mentioned. It's instead, this is very celebratory. It's more focused on demonizing Catholicism, and over time traditions sprung from these services, with people lighting bonfires, ringing bells, setting off fireworks, which was a sort of nod to the failed explosion of the plot. And what Catherine had mentioned, her mum hadn't mentioned, came over from the UK and had mentioned, she may remember though, she may talk about a penny for the guy. So there would be an effigy, and it would be very loosely made to look like a man. It would be just sort of almost sort of scarecrow-like, and we would call it a guy. Money would you would be sort of wheeled around the towns or village, money collected to pay for whether it's firewood or fireworks or whatever, and today we see that change into sort of famous effigies. I think one year Margaret Thatcher was a particular effigy that was publicly. Today we see bonfires. Sorry, Sarah, on you go, please.
I was just going to say, can we just, particularly for anyone who's not British that might not understand the history of how actually the Catholic ended up being in the minority, persecuted, kicked out of Parliament. In the 1500s, King Henry the whatever, I've forgotten, how shocking, King Henry the something, was it King Henry VIII? Right, King Henry VIII wanted to end his marriage, and he was not given permission to end his marriage. The Pope, the Catholic Church were 100%, you are not getting divorced. You might be a king, but you are not divorcing. That is against God's will, and you are not to do that. So in his fury at not being allowed to end his marriage, he started the entire Church of England. So he started the Church of England in order for him to be head of the church, so he could then give himself permission to divorce his wife. Now, that makes no sense to me at all, how he ever thought that was okay. But anyway, and then ever since then, we've had a Church of England, and the King and Queen are head of state of the Church of England and the Church of Scotland. And I'm not sure how the Church of Scotland even links into all this, Jane. So you need to, if there's a Scottish angle to this.
Because there's the head of the Church of England, not the head of the Church of Scotland.
Right.
Scotland's up here doing its own thing, partying hard. The reality is, when someone is raised being told they are gods, then what happens is you decide you can make your own rules, you can act with impunity, and where do we continue to see that playing out? Anyway, so today we have Bonfire Night, which is a much more family-friendly event. And it had lost the real sort of anti-Catholic, anti-Papist, sentiment over the years fairly quickly, I think. Today it's celebrated with toffee apples. It's celebrated with, I will just mute Sarah while she's getting fed. It's celebrated with toffee apples, sparklers. Children are parts of these events. We don't tend to see penny for the guy quite so much anymore. That would tend to be a sort of more grown-up political statement now. But yeah, it's so it's celebrated today in the UK, while Americans are like, what, you just have fireworks for no reason? Kind of, yes. So there's a connection between Guy Fawkes, but it's become a hell of a lot less relevant now. People who call it Guy Fawkes Night know exactly what you're talking about. People who call it Bonfire Night know exactly what you're talking about. And a little bit of the history of it is taught in schools today. So what I thought was interesting, the reason why I thought we could talk about it is it being a traditionally family-friendly event, it being something that, when I end the podcast, I'll go back upstairs and spend some more Bonfire Night time with my family. I wanted to talk about this idea with you, Sarah, of this conspiracy or this plot to do away with something, to get rid of what is considered unjust, what is considered to be not God's will. We want to redress. Clearly, God is going to want a Protestant monarch on the throne. It was violent. The thought of the effect that could have had on democracy is, it's an attack. It's a terrorist attack. It would have been, seen that way then and is seen that way now. What if there had been a different way to approach it? Those avenues weren't open then. If we are looking at the fact that we have these two opposing religions at times, it's still considered opposing today. There's still that tension here in Scotland and Ireland. And it's not supposed to be like that. We see the leaders actually working together in many ways. We see them marching for peace, against food poverty. Lots of great work is being done. Lots of great interfaith work is being done. However, we see those tensions start to rise at particular times of the year, when particular football games are played. And these tensions often are very violent.
Yeah.
What could it have looked like? What might it look like if a peaceful method had been chosen, rather than blowing things up? I guess what I'm getting at is this question. You could have chosen the blowing up method, the let's burn it all down. when it came to safeguarding and your Mormonism background, you could just blow it all up. But you chose a different way. You chose to engage with the church and work with the church. But we see so many people choosing the blow it all up methods. Is one better than the other, and why do you take the route that you take?
I think I can. First of all, I want to say I understand why people take all different routes to expressing how they feel about various things that are happening within the church. I understand people's hurt, people's anger, people's view that nothing is ever going to change, so let's burn the whole lot down and start again. I understand how people feel that way. I think my view when it has come to safeguarding, and I'll talk about that first and then others in general. My view is when it came to our work and our safeguarding campaign, what I've said to many people around the world that we've spoken to is you can do this and achieve these changes in your community where you stand. You can do this, but you will only bring about the conversations with the church that need to happen in order to bring about wholesale change of policies and engagement in safeguarding practices and discussions, if you go about it in a way that engages the church in discussion. And we've been absolutely brutal and honest on things we said on our podcast. We haven't pulled any punches, and we've been consistent in holding that line when we've spoken with church leaders and church lawyers. But what we have done is we took the line from the very beginning that if we had gone in full of hate and anger, nobody would have listened to a word we had to say. They would have dismissed it and said, you're just angry ex-Mormons. We're not going to listen to anything you've got to say. If we had gone in wanting to just make a name for ourselves and get 500,000 likes on Instagram in a single day, we would have actually sacrificed safeguarding because that would have become the priority. So we decided that we had to form in the very best way we could, and we don't say this with any naivety at all. We know the reality of this, but we needed to form the best relationships of trust and communication that we could form, so that we could take problems to them. We could ask them to sit with victims who wanted to have conversations with them. We could get them to get the area presidency to meet with victims that wanted to have that meeting. We could talk to them about risk that was happening in their community and in their church and how we felt they were being negligent and needed to get more serious about it. We could have those conversations because we didn't go into them with hate and anger. We went into those conversations with, we want this church to be the safest place it can be. We want people who choose to engage and remain and be part of this church to be able to be nurtured and loved and cared for, and that needs a church to be safe. So we kind of went about it in a way, and many people felt we were far too kind and polite and Mormon, and far too much so. And some people felt that we were just a little bit too extreme and shouldn't be saying or doing any of the things that we did. But we felt that we had to take that road of trying to build some peace in order to achieve justice. Now, I could do that with safeguarding. I've been far less successful in trying to have conversations in that way around how the LGBT community are treated. I probably haven't been as successful in having kind of chilled back, gentle, kind conversations about that. I've been a little bit more, well, there is nothing to discuss. This is simply wrong,
Yeah, I think what we can do is we can, make really, really clear, especially in the climate of today when hate and division is being sown, that we see politicians pointing to the others, whether it's the refugees, whether it's the people from minority ethnic backgrounds, whether it's people from who worship differently. There's always someone you can demonize. What we can categorically say is that violence, that the acts of terrorism, that violence is something that can absolutely categorically be rejected, and there is no place for it whatsoever.
100%.
Back in the days of the sort of Catholic Protestant divisions, it wasn't possible to speak out or to have sort of platforms where you could speak out. We're privileged that we do today, that we have that freedom. But we can be angry. So I think what I'm curious about is, so you remember? Do you remember the poem, right? The Bonfire Night, the Guy Fawkes poem.
Well, can I read it to you?
Please do.
Because most people, we only ever read the first 2 lines of it, but the whole poem. Remember, remember the 5th of November, gunpowder, treason and plot. I see no reason why gunpowder treason should ever be forgot. Now, most people remember that bit, but the rest of the poem goes on to say, Guy Fawkes, 'twas his intent to blow up the king and the parliament, 80 barrels of powder below, poor old England to overthrow. By God's providence he was catched with a dark lantern and burning match. Holla boys, let the bells ring. Holla boys, God save the king.
Right. So what is it we're remembering today?
Right.
What is it we can remember, and how do we move to remembering and reconciliation?
You see, are we remembering, and this is interesting, isn't it? Are we remembering that Guy Fawkes, led by Robert Gatsby and the rest of the conspirators, wanted to completely destroy Parliament and the King because they felt there was no way of negotiating, no way of reaching an amicable outcome, and it was quite simply, it's us or them. We want to survive, you have to go. So are we remembering the failure of the use of violence to destroy democracy and to destroy the Houses of Parliament? Are we remembering the failure and celebrating the failure? Or are we remembering a group of people that felt so persecuted they felt they had no choice but to come out fighting, even if it meant they'd lose their lives? When we started our safeguarding campaign, we started it feeling that we would not have our church membership left at the end of it. We started it convinced that we would lose our church membership. Now, in many ways, we haven't ended up with our church membership, but it's because we chose to excommunicate the church from our lives, not the other way around. But, what are we remembering? Are we remembering failure, or are we remembering success?
You see, I think, because you're right in what you're saying about, the only option that they saw was this violent means of being able to make their point, to set something right through violence. And I think that's throughout the history of Mormonism. I think those lessons are, and they're still being learned today, let's face it, with sending armies out onto, streets that are peaceful. We're still seeing that today. The reality is, though, that when the plotters were apprehended, I mean, a real example was made of them. I mean, it was violent. The information was tortured out of Guy Fawkes. He was.
Right.
These were barbaric ways to punish people, and so to be able to completely leave all of that behind in the name of a better way, reconciliation did not come then, and yet we see signs of it today. We see signs of the peace agreements in Northern Ireland, the Good Friday Agreement, where reconciliation is possible. We can see we can see today better ways of doing things, and they may be slower, they may be less controversial. We often see, calls to name and shame, publicly talk about things, publicly, when someone has wronged either individuals or people in the community, to just bring as much notice and attention to that as possible. and it's not necessarily the best way forward. The idea of reconciliation absolutely fascinates me, because I think there's room for healing in that.
I think there is. What we saw after the failure of the gunpowder plot, what we actually saw was more draconian, restrictive laws passed in the country to suppress Catholics. For example, Catholics were excluded from public life. They were banned from working in the legal profession, banned from being officers in the army, banned from owning land. They couldn't be members of parliament. They had to swear specific oaths of allegiance to the monarch. There was, as you said, there was the Thanksgiving Act where they had to attend church. There was no choice in it. So what happened when the gunpowder plot failed was the laws against Catholics became more draconian, more restrictive and more punitive. And actually, back to how does this mirror what we see in the church, is actually what we see is when people speak out and fight for justice, the church normally becomes more draconian and more harsh and more punitive towards those people,
So
which we see. So actually, so what is it about? Yeah, so what is it about when people speak out for justice that the people who you're fighting for justice against become more draconian? And we could actually look at lots of things happening in the world today: Ukraine, Russia, Gaza, Israel. You could actually look at all of these issues, couldn't you? And as soon as somebody starts speaking out, like, well, what happened when Moses started saying to Pharaoh, "Free my people"? Pharaoh was like, "There's no chance on this earth. You can do twice the amount of work now. You can have half the amount of whatever. You can just, we made your life even worse." Okay, so as soon as people start campaigning in a religious setting for more and more freedom, the religious powers that be tend to become more harsh and punitive, right back to, as we saw that with the gunpowder plot, and we see it in the modern LDS church.
You had brought up the subject of LGBTQ rights, the rights of the queer community. We saw someone, several years ago, speak out in a BYU address, referring to his queerness, referring to his sexual orientation, and it was a watershed moment for Mormonism. It was wonderful. It was being celebrated. Then, exactly like you say, we saw these calls from the church, from the well-loved leader Jeffrey R. Holland, calling for musket fire. That's what's needed. Right. Now, can religion, is it possible to have reconciliation with religion? Do we need to get rid of religion in the world to have peace? Or is it possible that religions can be leaders and help in that work of reconciliation? Because I want to say yes. It's just hard to find examples of it, right?
Isn't it? It's the intolerance towards religion that is the issue, and people's inability to accept that other religions are as equally valid and beautiful and as godlike as their own religion, which is what stops religions being able to move forward. Because if we all believed that everyone else's religion was God-led, it was pleasing in the sight of God, it was wonderful, it was loved, it was great, if we all believed that about all religions, then that would stop 90% of the hassles and problems that we see. The difficulty is everybody is so determined to hold fast to their religion being the true religion and their God being the true God, and therefore the things they believe and say and do and want as being the only right things, that seems to come at the cost of respecting other people's freedom. We talk a lot about religious freedom in the church, but actually we're not very good at this. We talk a good talk about religious freedom, we talk a good talk, but what we actually mean is, as LDS Mormon Church, we want the right to do the things we want to do. That's what religious freedom means to the church. It doesn't mean we want to have everybody else have the right to live and do how they want to.
But And apologies for anyone that I've been speaking to this week who may feel that this conversation is familiar to them, because I love you all. Yeah, we were having a conversation with a good friend. It was a sort of post Sunstone symposium happened last weekend, and lots of fantastic ideas and perspectives were being shared, and we were. I was hearing from someone who, and he was talking about how the idea that Mormonism, the LDS flavour of Mormonism, has the expectation about the gospel filling the whole earth, and that, well, we're supposed to bring religion to everyone. It's supposed to cover the earth, and so we're supposed to bring that true religion to everyone. Now, in my Mormon days, I remember feeling mildly uncomfortable with it, but you know, yeah, that's the scriptural mandate, right? And I was having a conversation today with Sara and the incredible Andrew Bolton, Lachlan Mackay, who are both members of Community of Christ, and I was asking them about this. What about this mandate? Are we supposed to be getting people to the point where everyone's converted to a true faith? And both of them were like, well, no, you know, and had talked about how this was due to the extreme goodness, good works, shown by other members of other religious communities, the work of peace that's been done by members of other religious communities, the holy envy they have for some of them, the unwillingness for them to judge anyone as we have something that you need to have, the unwillingness for them to put that on anyone, that if someone wanted to have information, that they'd be quite happy to talk about, you know, their faith and how they practice it, but other than that, it's a very personal thing. It's down to you. And this lines up much more with a God that we seem to be trying to focus on today, that we reject the God of peace and war and fire and brimstone and vengeance, which was whether you were Catholic or Protestant, that was the God of Guy Fawkes, that was the God of King James, that was the God of the gunpowder plotters. Today we can use our rational brains, that if we decide that the path of following or worshipping a God, the path of following and worshipping perhaps Christ, if that is worth doing, then that is someone who has sacrificed for us. Therefore, this is someone who knows how to love. And there isn't a place for that. I asked them specifically, you know, you talk about Zion. Will Zion just be full of Christians, and specifically the right flavour of Christians? And Lachlan Mackay, both of them, Lachlan Mackay specifically had said, no, I do not believe that that's what it's going to look like at all. And that, I believe, see if we can imagine a world like that. Real reconciliation, real peace, not because we're trying to indoctrinate everyone else into what we need them to believe, because we're claiming that the scriptures literally say you have to convert people. I don't choose to believe that. I don't think that's what the scriptures mean anyway. I certainly don't think that's the intent. I think what we're talking about is bringing the values that Christ was bringing to the earth, the values that God wants us to practice. I think it's about bringing those to the whole world. It would be very weird to think that Christ wants to convert everyone to Christianity and that's his goal, when he didn't set up a church in the first place. You know, it's where do you want them to go? Christianity, what is it? You know, the OG Christianity that Christ set up, it didn't exist. Like, where do you want them to go? What's the plan there? Do they do we have missionaries with key performance indicators that are keeping a track of the numbers? No, we didn't. It was more about, it was more about the life that they should be living. Those are my thoughts anyway. I don't know.
Yeah, well, when you think, I mean, we're in 2025 now. This gunpowder plot was in 1605, and we've still got religions across the world at loggerheads with each other. How do we ever get to the point? Because I believe that if we're going to ever have peace in the world, there has to be peace between religious groups. We've got to stop the hatred and discrimination between Jews and Arabs,
right?
Between Muslims and Christians,
do we
between
have
any other group.
I guess that's what I'm asking. What's our role in that? How do we go in as white saviors and facilitate that? Do we? What's your thoughts?
Well, you see, I think our role in that is very often. Sometimes the most powerful role you can take is the role of doing nothing, and sometimes that can be very powerful. Sometimes it can be the most worst thing on this earth to do. Other times it can actually be quite powerful. We should do nothing about the religion that people want to follow. I remember once hearing Steve Veazey, who used to be the prophet president of Community of Christ Church, and he was once asked about converting people to join Community of Christ, and he said, we don't proselyte, we don't preach the gospel to people. And then he stood up and he said, we're not sheep stealers. He said, if people are happy in their religion, he said, and they're happy where they are, then we're happy for them to stay there and enjoy that and not come to us. He said, we're not stealing sheep and getting people to come to us. Now, if all religions in the world...
That was a conversation.
Yes, he was. He was talking to John Dillon. He was. It was
right?
Yeah. It was Mormon Stories podcast. And he said, we're not sheep stealers. And I love that comment ever since I've heard it. Because if we could really, truly, every single individual from the bottom of our hearts in this world respect the religious beliefs that another group holds and leave them to their religious faith and their religious beliefs, instead of thinking we know better. And instead of having this, which is generally a white saviour arrogance, that what we have is better than what you've got, and you can't possibly be happy if you haven't got what we've got. You just think you're happy. You're kidding yourself. You can't possibly be. You've got to come and partake of what we have to be truly happy. Now, if we could let go of that and we could embrace all the good things that every religion has to offer, then I think we'd be a step closer to finding some peace and freedom, being able to live side by side.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be a cure-all, but it would help.
Yeah, and what I would add to that is, because we haven't mentioned the privilege that we have, although I think that's been sort of the unspoken thing in the background, the privilege that we have, that we do have platforms, the ability to speak truth to power. We have the freedom to say what we think. We have the freedom to worship that we want to worship. We're white. We have, a little disposable income, so we can feed ourselves. We're sort of relatively secure. So that privilege that we have, I think, where we have that privilege, it's really important to amplify the voices of the marginalized, whatever that looks like, wherever there is wherever there's pain and exclusion. And that means not speaking for people. That literally means amplify the voice. I love the the comment, the wonderful comment from Canada about your experience in the Anglican Church is not talking about us and them, seeming to try to be good people, doing what they can to gather a few projects a month for the less fortunate. And I mean that's so wonderful, and I've loved seeing the work online with trying to get aid to places it needs to go, to call out intolerance, whether it's whether it's queerness, whether it's transgender, whether it's women's issues, whether it's whatever that looks like, marginalization being called out and the voices of those people who are experiencing it to be amplified. I think that's a very, very good thing. And I know that if we are trying to be Christian, Jesus did a fair good amount of listening, right? He went to the community and he learned, and he at times changed his plans based on what he was learning. Women challenged him and he changed his plans.
Yeah.
That's the kind of faith that interests me. That's the kind of faith that intrigues me.
Yeah.
So yeah, Bonfire Night.
Bonfire Night.
It's weird that we celebrate it. It's weird, but that's where it started. It's now a ton of fun, and when we wake up tomorrow, the entire UK will be very, very sort of foggy with the lingering smell of gunpowder. Well, we remember. I'm a lot less interested in remembering the history of how it came about than what might be possible. Let's maybe think about remembrance and reconciliation. And I don't know. I think maybe that's the right track to be on.
I think it is. I think that's what we need to strive for.
Yeah. Do you want to see, before we head out tonight? We're going to surprise everyone with what we'll be back with next week. We'll keep you posted, but we will be back next week. Sara, do you want to say anything before we head off?
No, I think the words in the start of the Gunpowder Plot poem, remember, remember. What do we need to remember if we want to bring about peace, reconciliation, justice? What do we need to remember? And I think maybe that's a good thing for us to go away with and think about what we need to remember to bring about the type of world that we want our children to live in.
I am going to take us out with a final thought, just re-emphasising something that Sara brought up earlier on. The Guy Fawkes story is an extreme one. We see extremes happening in the world all the time at the moment. It's being reported. Things are pretty bloody scary out there. There wasn't a huge amount of time that passed between the original November the 5th policy of exclusion in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, which was designed to marginalise, which was designed to keep people out. That policy was ratified in many ways. When they got rid of it, elements of it came back. It's just sort of come back with it in a different way now. We're always going to have some reason why we actually do need to remember how close we come to othering people, to seeing people have their rights stripped away, seeing people othered, and we cannot go back there again. Working towards reconciliation, I think, has to be our goal.
We have to remember the harm caused by November the 5th policy. The November 5th policy caused untold hurt and harm to our gay brothers and sisters. It really did, and we should never forget that. And in remembering that, we should remember what this church is capable of doing in the name of what they believe to claim God is telling them to do. And we should never forget that in the name of believing they are right before God, this church is capable of causing extreme harm. But it's also capable of doing extremely great things.
Absolutely. Absolutely. As are we all. We are all capable of causing extreme harm. We are capable of doing extreme good. Let's go do some extreme good. People, thank you so much. Tonight was a complete change of pace. We hope to be able to keep that up. The next couple of weeks is when Sara's meeting with her leaders. We will have an update for you at some point.
So week Sunday. We will update after that meeting.
Absolutely. So in the interim,
I hope they don't cancel it now.
Can you imagine? In the meantime, Shout out, let's all shout out to Sarah's Bishop and State President. Whoop, whoop. You've got
My
this.
previous state president and my current bishop.
Yes,
Get that right.
You know what? It's going to be that's right. It's going to be wonderful. Don't be scared, guys. She's wonderful. She's incredible. To be able to spend time answering some questions from this incredible girl is a privilege. Just know that she's wonderful and look after her for us. Okay, people, we'll see you all next week. Have a great bonfire night and remember wherever you are. Good night, everyone.
Night, guys.